You're listening to Black Parents Aging, where we help you navigate caring for aging loved ones. Every Wednesday, we'll discuss how to help your parents successfully navigate this new season of life. We are going to talk about legal, health, technology, and finances. Here's your host attorneys, Olivia Smith and Nicola Robinson.
Hello, and thank you for joining Black Parents Aging. This is Olivia Smith, and I am flying solo today. Nicola is not with me, so it's just me and you today. And the topic that we are going to talk about that I want to explore with you a little bit today is how to create a safe home environment for your aging parent or loved one. Many times over the holidays, we visit our loved ones, we visit our parents. Now, that may be a little different this year because of COVID, but I do know that people are still visiting their loved ones just on a smaller scale, and the gatherings are smaller than they would usually be. And so this is the ideal time to check things out and see if there are some safety hazards that can be easily fixed. There's a lot of technology out there, wearables, smart speakers, devices to remind people of things, the ability to turn on a video call with a loved one with just your voice. And so these are ways that you can prevent that dreaded call in the middle of the night saying that your aging parent or loved one has fallen and is being taken to the hospital. And where these are great, there are also some precautions that can be taken to make sure that you never get to that point as well. And these things that I'm going to talk to you about today are, I think, simple observations, simple tweaks that you can make in your loved one's home that can make a world of difference. Now, as I talk to you about these things, what I also just want you to keep in mind too, is you always want to be observing your loved one's mental state. Are they happy? Are they able to keep up with everything? Are they lonely? Do they really want to live alone, or are they just not wanting anything to change? And so this is a part of the ongoing conversation that we talked about in episode 1. And when I told you that it wasn't just one conversation, it was many, this is a part of that continued conversation that you are having with your aging parents. So when I talk about prevention, I have put it into 3 different categories. I've talked about preventing the increased fall risk. I'm going to talk about preventing the fire risk. And then I'm going to talk about just other vulnerabilities that you need to keep in mind. So when we think about the fall risk, the CDC has a lot of good statistics and resources about that. And specifically about older people having falls. And they define older people as 65 years of age or older. According to them, 1 out of every 5 falls causes a serious injury, such as a broken bone or a head injury. More than 300,000 older adults are hospitalized for hip fractures each year. And 95% of hip fractures are caused by falls. So knowing that, what are the things that we can do to make sure that we are keeping our loved ones from falling, or at least lowering the risk that they will have a fall? The first thing is check carpets for worn areas and rips. You want to tack down flaps and curled edges. The next thing is get rid of throw rugs, or make sure they have that rubber non-skid backing that makes sure they stay in place. Because if you have a throw rug on a hardwood, it has a tendency to move. So that rubber backing will keep it in one place and prevent your parent from stepping on it and it moving and then them falling. You want to make sure that the floors are even and level, and repair loose floorboards and remove thresholds at doorways. So, sometimes in a doorway, you have to step up a little bit. So you can remove that so where it's all one level. Those are things you want to think about. You also want to think about clear hallways and other pathways of waste paper baskets, footstools, magazine racks, electrical wires, and other small objects. You want to make sure that your parent has a clear path. And so removing all of that other stuff that they can stumble over helps prevent the risk that they may stumble over something and fall. Also, I know my mom has a very green thumb and has lots and lots of plants. And so you want to think about if they have hanging plants, do they have to duck or maneuver around those plants to get where they're going? And if they do, then you may want to change the location of the plant. Now let's talk about stairs. Ideally, your parent, as they age, would live in a home that had no stairs, but I know that's not realistic. I know folks ain't trying to move to one level houses just because they're aging. And so you have aging loved ones that are in multi-level houses. And so if you do, here are some things that you want to think about. You want to make sure that there are handrails on the steps. So a lot of houses have handrails automatically on the steps, but just like the one in my house currently, it may be a little loose. And so what you want to do is make sure that that handrail is tight, because if your loved one needs that handrail for support or to break a fall or to prevent a fall, you want to make sure that the handrail is going to be able to hold up. And don't forget the stairs to the basement if there's one. Make sure that there are handrails there as well. Mark the edges of steps or any place the floor changes elevation, even slightly, with brightly covered adhesive tape. Now, this may not be good for decor. And maybe you can get some tape that kind of matches whatever the decorations are in your loved one's home. But you want to get something that indicates, hey, this is not level. It's getting ready to change. And so the elevation of the floor is getting ready to change as a reminder, so they know to step up. So however you do that, you can be as sensitive to the decoration of the room or not, but you just want to put something there as a reminder. You also want to think about the non-slip treads on stairs. Consider getting rid of carpet on stairways as well, as it rounds off the edges of the steps and shortens the depth of each step. I have to say, too, because I have taken a couple falls on my steps, and they're hardwood, and they don't have the slip protected on it. And I had on socks, and I was standing on the step, I think, reading something on my phone, and before I knew it, my feet were off the step, and I had taken a very hard fall, and I just laid there for a minute. So that is something you want to keep in mind too. If your loved one has a certain pair of house shoes that they wear that doesn't have tread on it, and you have hardwood stairs, that may be something you think about as well. That may not be the safest thing. Also, you want to think about the bed. Is it too high or is it too low? Is it easy for your loved one to get in and out of the bed as they need to? You also want to get rid of beds and any other furniture with wheels that do not lock. Now, this was a lesson to Nicola and I, just dealing with clients that were aging, because we had a conference room with chairs with wheels, and they didn't lock. And whereas that wasn't an issue for us at all, so we didn't think about it, as our clients came in and out of the conference room, we noticed that they had trouble getting in and out of the chairs because they had wheels on them, and sitting back or sitting up in the chair. And so we had to change that. Now, that's not something that we would have ever really thought about until we saw it for ourselves. So that is something you want to make sure that anything that has a wheel can lock. Also, in your bathrooms, you may want to install grab bars near the toilet and the tubs. You may consider getting a raised toilet so it's easier to sit down and get up off of. You also may want to think about installing the non-slip strips on the floor of the tub or shower. If you haven't noticed yet, those non-slip strips, they continue to be a good idea all over the place. And so in the tub, they're great. On the stairs, they're great. to just provide some extra friction so it makes it less easy for a fall. You also may want to provide that rubber back on your floor mats in the bathroom to keep them from slipping as well. And quite honestly, you may want to make sure you have that rubber backing for runners in your hallways, for area rugs, for anywhere there is some sort of area rug throughout the house that is maybe on a tile floor or a hardwood floor and is more apt to slip or slide. So that's my spiel on preventing an increased fall risk. So when you are going to your loved one's home in the near future or for the holidays, these are things that you can just kind of take inventory of and look around and see kind of what's going on there. The next thing I want to talk a little bit about is the fire risk. So what are things that may be an increased risk to catch fire or to be a burn risk? The first thing is we need to make sure that we have a smoke detector and that it works. Now, that's not just for your aging loved one. That should be for you, and all of us need to make sure that we have working smoke detectors, that the battery's in there, and not that they're just there as decoration, but that they're actually going to do the job we need them to do when we need them to do it. Also, you want to check to see if there are easy escape routes in case of fire. Your parents may not be able to move as fast as they once could. And so you want to really think about where and how they can get out of the home if there's a fire. Are they in a wheelchair? Are there certain doors that are, they can get out of and certain doors that they can't? Are there windows that are stuck and they wouldn't be able to open? Are, windows easy to open? These are things that you may want to think about. I know when I was little, my parents used to do a drill with us because they wanted to make sure that if there was ever a fire, we would know exactly what to do and how, where to go and what to do. That shouldn't just be for little kids. That should be for all of us. We all need to make sure that we are looking at our house, making sure there are clear paths out if needed, where the exits are, what are all the options in case of a fire. And so you would want to do the same thing with your aging parent or loved one. You also want to buy a fire extinguisher, and you want to buy one that's going to be easy to handle. You're going to want to put that in a convenient place, preferably in the kitchen, because oftentimes that's where fires start. You're going to want to go over with your parent how to use it. You're going to want to make sure that the bathroom and kitchen outlets contain working circuit interrupters to prevent shock. And in the kitchen, you're going to want to check to make sure the burners and the oven work properly. That's big. You're also going to want to make sure that none of the outlets are overloaded, like they've got too many things plugged into one outlet. And you're going to want to make sure that, for instance, your mom may have her spice shelf or something right over the stove. And so she would need to lean over the stove to get it. And she may catch a sleeve or apron on fire, or maybe she has some pots that hang right over the stove. And so maybe you want to move those pots or those spices and put them somewhere else. And so to decrease the fire risk from her having to lean over the stove. The next couple things I want to talk to you about are not necessarily a fire risk, but could be a burn risk. So what you also want to think about is how hot the hot water is in the house. And that may mean that you need to go check the hot water heater and see what the temperature's set on. I know my parents get cold easily. Oftentimes when I walk in their house, I feel like I'm in the tropics. And so your loved one may get cold easily. And so they may use, for instance, a space heater along with their heating. And so you want to make sure that it is a space heater that has a safety mechanism already factored in. And so I know I have a space heater, and it will turn off if it is not flatly on the floor. So if all legs aren't on the floor, it's not going to work. So you may want to make sure that your loved one has something like that to prevent it turning over and starting a fire, or it turning over and staying on and burning your loved one. And then the last thing, when we're talking about safety and fire risk, is electric blankets. So, I don't know if your loved one may use an electric blanket at night. So you may want to make sure that it is safe, or you may want to suggest something else to keep them warm that is not an electric blanket. So those are a couple things that you want to consider and think about as far as a fire or burn risk. Now, I think everything that I have listed so far is pretty easy to both identify and change. It doesn't require a lot of financial resources to be able to do these things. They're just little things around the house that you can do to make it safer. And so that's what we wanted to do. We didn't want to give you like, you're going to have to do renovations and for you to get stressed out about how we're going to afford that. These are just little things that any of us can do to make the home for our aging loved ones safer. So that's what we wanted to do. The last one is what I call other vulnerabilities. Now, this is different. The first two things were actual physical things that you can see and do around the house. This one is protecting your loved one from people that may want to take advantage. So this is a different type of vulnerability that aging people sometimes have. And so you hear the stories every year about elder abuse, not physical abuse, but people running scams where they call and get their social security card or number, or call and get their numbers to their account, or call and say, okay, you won this thing, but you have to send so much money here, and dupe aging people out of their money. So that is a vulnerability that you really want to think about. You also hear about people taking up with older people. Like all of a sudden, your great aunt has got this new friend that you ain't never seen before, and she's always around because she's using her resources. She maybe have access to her account, or she's in the house eating up all the food, or she's using the house and has a room in there and now is staying with your great aunt rent free. And so I'm sure take up is probably not the technical word that we should use, but you know what I mean. Random people that just show up all of a sudden and they're always around, and you are trying to figure out why your aging loved one can't separate or get rid of these people. It's because they have tapped into what they feel is a resource, and they plan on using it for as long as they can. So that's one vulnerability that I want you to really be thinking about and to discuss with your aging parents and loved ones so that they can be on the lookout for this too. And so when they can see it when it's coming, and they can either call you or say, I'm not interested. The other thing is they may have hired somebody to help around the house, a caregiver, or somebody to just come part-time and pitch in, or you may have hired someone to do that just to provide a little help for your aging loved one. Now, I know this sounds crazy, and I know when I say it, you're going to roll your eyes, but this happens. So I just want to, I'm planting the seed in you for you to keep an eye on this. I know you've heard the stories where there are caregivers to aging people, maybe they're widowers or they're widows or they're just single, and then they wind up marrying the people that they're taking care of, and your loved one is marrying somebody half their age. You're going to want to be on the lookout for that as well, because it happens. And they are only marrying them so that they can have access to all of the resources they have. Now, the next one, I'm going to keep it real because that's why we're doing this podcast. You're going to want to keep out for, it's not just strangers that take advantage of aging people. Sometimes the people that take the most advantage of aging people are the people that are related to them. So I'm talking about kids, I'm talking about grandkids, I'm talking about nieces, nephews, siblings. These are things that you also want to keep in mind, that loved ones will take advantage of aging loved ones. And I'm not telling you something I've heard, I'm telling you something I know. Every time I see it, I'm shocked. I don't know why, but we've seen it even in our practice. And we don't practice elder abuse, but in the process of doing estate planning or taking care of some of the elder law needs of clients, it pops up. And every time it does, I am shocked because I just can't imagine taking advantage of someone that I love. But this may happen in the form of a child who has access to their parents' bank account, and they use that money to pay their parents' bills, but they also use that money to pay their bills. Or they have access to they're the power of attorney, so they have access to the finances of their aging loved one, and they use that to sell a property, and whatever they made on that property never makes it into the account of their aging loved one. These things happen. And so you want to just be cognizant, and you want to be observant, and you want to have these conversations with your parents so they can be aware that this is a possibility. These things happen as well, and they can take some of the proper precautions for themselves. There really are so many layers to our parents' lives as they start to age. And what we are attempting to do is just pull back some of the layers a little bit and to be observant in ways that we haven't had to be before. Now, we're not saying to get all in your parents' business, and we know that they're not going to let you, because they're going to tell you real quick, why are you asking? Mind your business. And so we're not saying to snoop and to be, all in their business, but we are saying to be observant, to notice subtle changes. One of the things you can also do, and that, is said to be a good indicator, is what is in the fridge. Are they eating healthy? Are they keeping and throwing away expired food? Or is it organized, or is there clutter in there? So opening the fridge and just looking in may be a good indicator as to what is going on overall with your aging loved one's life when you are not there. We want you to always be accepting, be supportive, and we want you to point out these things, ask these questions, make these observations, always with care and concern for your loved one, always so that they feel like you love them, and always so that they have their dignity. Those are paramount, but we want you to be realistic, and we want you to know that some of these things that I talked about today, they happen. And so if I can just plant the seed in you so that you are more aware and you are kind of looking for these things, then I've done my job. And as we talked about in the first podcast, and I mentioned in this podcast, having these conversations early is so important, because it allows our loved ones to plan without feeling like they are being forced to do anything. That's all for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope this was helpful. I hope maybe it made you think about your loved one's living environment, and if it is safe, or if there are some things that you can do to make it safer. As always, we would love to hear your feedback, comments, or questions. You can always join us in our Facebook group, Black Parents Aging, and I will see you next time.
Thanks for joining us this week on Black Parents Aging. Check out our Facebook group at Black Parents Aging, where we go live to answer your questions. For more info on today's topic, check out the show notes on our website, srlawgrp.com. If you know someone who could benefit from today's episode, please share a link to the show. Subscribe to the show to catch new episodes and leave a review. Until next week.